Okay, so we're going to get started with kind of shifting gears a little bit. We're going to start on graphic design today, and we've been working pretty extensively in Photoshop. And so everything so thus far has been in Photoshop. It's about pixel by pixel correction, using a clone stamp to copy one area of an image, enhancing photos, all of those techniques. We're going to move today into the world of graphic design. And I'm spend a lot of time talking about the process of design and whatever. I think it's very applicable to design in general. And we'll speak specifically to our graphic design today, but the strategies and the things that we talk about apply to all areas of design. This also means that we're shifting from working in Photoshop to working in Adobe InDesign, which is another software that's available in the Creative Suite. We'll start working pretty extensively with that. If you've been in 121, you've already had a bit of a crash course with InDesign. We'll hopefully sharpen up some skills and get you to be a little bit better. So this module, so to speak, is very much about Adobe InDesign. That doesn't mean that you can forget everything you just learned in Photoshop and not do it. It actually means that I'm expecting you to process, let's say we're using an image, post-process that image, make the image perfect in Photoshop, and then bring it into your layout in InDesign. So it's very much a stacking effect. So we take what we learned in Photoshop, we stack on top of that, and continue building in the next layer of software. So don't just forget about what it is that we're doing or that we've done. Make sure you understand that it's a stacking effect. So let's talk about graphic design. What is the function of graphic design and why is it important? So I'm betting that all of you could have some kind of an inkling of why graphic design might be important or what graphic design is. I have a definition for you, and I think that sometimes rather than having a big discussion about it, it's good to move on. We've got a lot of demo to do. So really, what is the function of graphic design? It's the communication of messages through the juxtaposition of words and pictures. So graphic design is fundamentally about the graphics that are on the page. And how do you arrange that content, the words, the pictures, to communicate some kind of a message to the reader? You could argue that it's the visual synthesis of thought. You have an idea. How do you get that idea out on paper and project it to the world? Design objectives. So these we could come up with a list that was way longer than this, but guidance, persuasion, encouragement, communicating something, motivating somebody to do something, educating somebody. Maybe you want to have a dialogue. Maybe it's about inspiration or promotion of a particular product. Maybe it's just informational. Could be raising awareness of something. Could be giving you directions on how to do something. Or it could be pure entertainment. These are all acceptable and obvious design objectives. And like I said, we could probably come up with a list that was much, much longer than just that. But it's a good way of kind of framing what it is that we're trying to do in graphic design. And if you can identify what that thing is that we're trying to do, it oftentimes helps you in the overall presentation. Establishing function. So first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is the purpose of a particular design? And in the world of graphic design, that's fundamentally what are we doing with this? Why are we making this product? Why are we making this piece of paper? Why are we putting the content on this? Could be an invitation, could be a poster, could be a book, could be any number of things that are in advertisement, a billboard, etc. What's our primary objective? What are we trying to do? Are we selling something? We're trying to raise awareness. Who's the audience? Who are we trying to reach with our communication? What's the desired reaction? Do you want me to click on something? Do you want them to do something specific? Those are all really, really important for graphic design. It is you, the designer's responsibility, to create strong communicative experiences that support the function of design on behalf of the client and for the viewer. So this has a lot of really key words in it, right? So we've got designer's responsibility. So that's you, and this is your job. We're supporting the function of design on behalf of the client and for, keyword, the viewer. So on behalf of means you're doing it for the client. They've hired you to do it. They've asked you to do it. In the case of this class, when I ask you to do a lecture series poster, I'm the client. I've asked you to make this, but you're not really doing it for me. You're doing it for the viewer, the person who's actually looking at the poster. So if we use the lecture series as the example, I might be asking you to do the lecture series, but your intended audience is the people who will come to the lecture series. And that's a very important distinction. You as a designer need to have a whole bunch of skills. And this is like the last list that I showed you. We could go on and on about these, but analysis, perception, communication, research management, problem solving, visualization, composition, dialogue, organization, systemization, information gathering, critical thinking, representation, all of these are important designer skills for you to have. And I'm sure I could come up with a list that was much, much longer than this. So let's look specifically at inspiration. This is key here. The process of being mentally stimulated to do or to feel something, especially to do something creative. So this is that we as designers, you're in this class because you're interested in design, because you're interested in this creative process. And because you're interested in this creative process, you have a natural form of inspiration that's going with inside you. That's causing you to want to do the things that we do. So how do we nurture this inspiration? Well, first off, if you're aware of your surroundings, that's really important. It's so easy to walk down the street and put your head down and put your hood up and just kind of cruise along and try to get from one place to another. You know, it's hard to roll out of bed in the morning and come to this class, because I know you all did and you're in your jammies. I still have jammy bottoms on too. But it's hard to do that and be attentive to your surroundings. So you want to wake up and you want to look around. How many little details did you look at this morning? Did you look at how the end of your toothpaste tube was fused together and whether that was interesting or not? Did you look outside? Did you look at how the sun was shining on the trees outside? Did you even go outside? Being attentive to what's surrounding you really matters. Did you notice the cobwebs? Did you notice the texture on the wall? Did you notice the flooring, the grooves, the grain? All of those things matter in the world of inspiration. And if you're aware of them, maybe something in there is going to inspire you to do something. You're going to come up with an idea. So instead of putting your head down and just trying to get from point A to point B, open your eyes, look around. Because when you're looking around, you're going to find things that are interesting. Generally, these things that you find that are interesting get chewed on in your brain, and then they start to transform themselves into new ideas and tangible objects. The other thing about this is it's different for everyone, even if you're sharing the same experience. So if I go to a lecture, let's use Ian's lecture that's coming up. If I go to the lecture and Anna goes to the lecture, we're both going to see different things and we're going to be inspired by different things based on what he's showing, because I have a different set of interests than she does. And so those are important things to be aware of, and it's perfectly okay and reasonable as a designer to have that. Inspiration be a chore. Love it. And because you love it, it shouldn't be a lot of extra effort to, oh, I need to go be inspired. Well, and that really doesn't work. Let me go be inspired. Well, it doesn't work that way. Inspiration comes naturally. It comes from this desire to communicate or to create new things. Always look toward yourself, though. What is it that makes you tick? What do you love to do? If you know what you love to do, especially when it's related to a design field, that generally will get you chewing and get you going on an inspiration and have you come up with a new idea. Collecting ideas is also important. So I hope that a lot of you carry sketchbooks or at least have a sketchbook that you draw in. It's kind of weird now. You know, back when I was in school, you had to have a physical sketchbook. And I got really interested in these little moleskin sketchbooks. And I always carried one of those in my pocket so I could draw my ideas out and what have you. Now, a lot of times people live on their phones or their tablets or whatever, and they use that for sketching. And that's okay. It's a different form of sketchbook. There's something about paper and writing that is different. But if you're comfortable in the digital realm and you want to use your iPad as your sketchbook, I think it's reasonable. You just want to be proficient so that this doesn't out on the page or on the digital page. write notes, make drawings, take photos. That's the one thing that has improved a lot, is the ability. You could just pull out your phone and take a picture of it. Well, that helps. Those are all ideas that you can collect and use and chop up. Those are for the non-physical things, the things you can't collect. If you can collect things, even better. You know, you have a ticket and that ticket's interesting, or this, you see this little poster or a leaflet that's really well designed. You can collect that and put it in your sketchbook. So how do you nurture inspiration? Nurturing your inspiration. Notice I use the word nurturing. That means growing it, making it better. How do you do that? Well, if you carry a sketchbook and a camera, well, good news, you have your phone, so you're carrying a camera. Carry a sketchbook and you get those ideas out of your head. You become immersed in design. And this is something that makes school so exciting. And it's actually probably the biggest thing I miss about not being in school. And part of the reason I'm so thankful to be teaching at DVC is that I can be around all of you that are immersed in and thinking about design. When you're out in the world trying to make money, sometimes you have to let the pure freedom of design go in the interest of satisfying a client's desires or actually making money, those kinds of things. So you don't get the freedom to be fully immersed in design that you would otherwise do, like as a student. So a good example of being immersed in design is go to the lecture tomorrow. Talk to your friends. Think about design ideas. Go on a firm tour. All of those things are part of being immersed in this design process. Commit to discovering and collecting inspirational factors. That just means keeping your eyes open and looking around, seeing what's going on in the world. Those are all really, really important. You want to have a dialogue and a communication with other designers. That's equally as important. When you can talk to somebody about your designs, that helps you develop and push your designs that much further. Now, if you feel stuck and you feel like you just need some way of nurturing this that's not active, those first 4 reasons are very active. The non-active reasons, the ones that just kind of help, are getting outside and taking a walk. You know, if you're into exercising and you want to go for a run, great, good for you. Minimum, go out and take a walk. Sometimes just being outside can help. Sometimes listening to music can really help. Now we're going to actually spend some time. This is a fun one in the exercise. We're going to spend some time looking at album covers today and developing a new album cover. But music can be wonderful in terms of nurturing your inspiration and getting yourself new ideas and helping your brain process. But you have to also figure out what's the right music for you. What music makes you tick? So my story relating to music, it's actually kind of funny. When I was in grad school, you have to write a grad thesis. So your grad thesis is maybe 80 to 100 pages of writing. So it's a lot. It's a book, basically. And you do a bunch of work, and then at the end of the semester, you have to sit down and you write this 80 to 100 pages. And you have 3 weeks to write this if you want to turn it in on time. A lot of times people don't turn it in on time. I wanted to turn it in on time. So I needed something that would kind of keep me going and somehow get words on the page and let me do this. So I would come in, this is long before earbuds or anything. I'd come in and I'd put the big headphones on my head and I'd sit down and I'd start typing and I listened to music. Now it's hard for me to admit this, but the music that I listened to, that I wrote my entire grad thesis to, was the soundtrack to the Pirates of the Caribbean, which is kind of silly when you look back on it, and I still laugh about it. But the truth was that it worked at the time. For whatever reason, the melodies and whatever was in that caused me to want to write. So listen to yourself, listen to what music inspires you to want to do something. And so for whatever reason, that worked. And it's important to notice that and to use that as an example. Explore other areas of interest. If you're interested in other things, by all means. Attend lectures. That's a big one. Or try something new. Inspiration is always the first step toward the final design. I love this cover. I think it's a great cover. Design process. So we're going to walk through this design process in some detail. We have 7 steps. We have the research phase, then we have the information gathering, We follow that with brainstorming, conceptualization, experimentation, development, and execution. And so the nice thing about this class is we don't have a test. So you don't have to memorize these steps, but it's kind of good to go through what these steps are. The other thing about it is that you can't skip steps in the design process. You can't jump to the end. And a lot of times people in design, especially in architectural design, they jump to the end and they present something and they realize they forgot so many different things because they didn't go through all the steps. And so you end up having to go back and do the steps anyway. You can't always focus on the final product. You're sure you have to be aware of what the final product is, but you can't always focus on that. Sometimes you have to just go through this evolution. Design is fundamentally an evolutionary process. You do a little bit, you reflect. You do a little bit more, you reflect. You change, you come back. You do it over and over and over. And each one of these steps has to have your full attention. You can't be distracted while you're designing. You have to give it that attention. It can be totally, utterly exhausting because it consumes you. But at the same time, it can be one of the most rewarding things that you do. When you create something that's spectacular, it's so rewarding and so powerful. So we're going to start with the project brief. This is the initiation of the design process. It should be a meticulous overview of the project, what it is that we're trying to do, and it should address every piece of the details of this problem. The truth is that oftentimes it doesn't. Oftentimes it's vague, and it's your responsibility to clarify what it is. It defines the roles of the designer, the client, and the viewer. Remember, we talked about before that the client and the viewer are often different people on behalf of the client and for the viewer. So the program, we're beginning with the information that's given by the client. We need to clarify and simplify that information so that we can use it. So a lot of times, and I use the architectural example here because it's more natural for me because that's what I studied, but the client comes to you and says, I want a new kitchen. Okay, that's great. Now, if I don't clarify or simplify that, if I just know that you want a new kitchen, the kitchen I go out and design might be completely different than the kitchen you want. So it's my job as the designer, my job as the architect, to work with that client and start to really understand what is it that you want about a kitchen. That's not specific enough. So I need to ask questions to clarify what it is you want in your kitchen. Do you want 2 dishwashers? Do you want 1? How large of a refrigerator? How big of a stove? Do you want a big open kitchen? Do you want it to be closed in? Do you like to cook? Do you not like to cook? All of those kinds of questions matter as you start to design that kitchen. So as the designer, I need to ask them. We need to define the primary goals and messages to be expressed. What am I trying to sell you or do with this graphic design? What restrictions do I have? Restrictions always come down to budget. How much money do I have? Does the end product have to be printed in black and white because I can't afford to print it in color? Those things matter. And what's a timetable for completion? How long do I have to work on this? When do I come back to you with a draft? And who is that viewer? Who is the audience that I'm trying to reach? Then we move into the gathering phase. This is where I'm collecting everything that's out there. So the textual and visual elements that I'm going to be using, if anything's missing, I need to get it from the client or define who is going to create it. I did a website for somebody who was running for a school board. And I said, hey, no problem. I could set you up with a website and whatever. And we got down the road and we got to where we had to put biography in and we had to put, their mission statement and all that stuff. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm the designer. I'm not going to write that for you. So I had to have them write that information. So I need to request it from them because it's important to the design process, but it's not my job to write it. Then I need to move into this research phase, this information gathering phase. And this is where I need to gain a better, broader understanding of the topic. I need to read all the materials. This sounds kind of obvious, right? But I do have to do this. I have to go through and I have to understand what's going on. How can I design something if I don't understand it? Go out and research other information. What competitive markets? Who else is doing things related to this? If I was doing a campaign for Nike and I was trying to present their graphics, well, it would be important to go to the other major shoe manufacturers and see what they're doing. See what the trends are in the industry. I need to review what other communications the client has done. What does their logo look like? What colors have they used? All those phases are important. And it's part of what makes design kind of fun. So if I'm in the world of architecture and I'm designing a museum, well, it makes sense to go and look at what other museums have done. If I'm designing a barn, well, I should probably go somewhere and look at what a barn looks like. Look at how it functions. That research is very, very important toward the final design. Then we get into brainstorming. This is where you're just creating ideas. And a lot of times this happens in your sketchbook. You're sketching out different ideas. Some people are afraid of drawing or don't like to draw. So instead, they write down lists of thoughts and ideas. That's fine. We're in a visual study. So doing drawing is a good thing, and getting in the habit of practicing and sketching is fantastic. So I would encourage you to sketch. But all of these methods help to get the ideas out. Then we get into conceptualization. This is where we're really formulating the plan for the project. What are we going to do? How are we going to get there? What's it going to look like? It's the thematic link between the design, the function, and the delivery. So what theme are we going through here? What are we really trying to accomplish? Then we get into experimentation or design development. This is where you're actually really producing the design. You're putting color studies together, different colors, different compositions, different typography. You're developing different treatments and illustrations. All of those things are really important. You're taking different photographs, different angles, and figuring out what worked. Maybe vary the sequence. Once you've got something, you put it to the side and you try something completely different, completely new. All of that evolution, that's part of that evolution that I was talking about in the design process. Really, really important. You can introduce graphic shapes, lines, dividing lines. All of those things matter, and they're part of this developmental process. Then we get to the execution. This is when you look at all those ideas that you created and you say, how does it formulate? How does it come together into a cohesive body? How do I make this really start to come together? And not all of those ideas are fully fleshed out. Maybe you've gone down a little bit of a tangent and you've decided that this is exciting, but then really this is better. This other idea over here is better at showing a particular idea, but you can take pieces of that, partial idea and bring it over and attach it over here. So you fuse it all together, you examine every detail, and you make sure it's satisfying what you're trying to satisfy. Then this is, if you take nothing else away from my entire lecture today, it's this line right here: divorced from attachment. As a designer, this is the hardest thing that you will ever learn to do. I promise you that. It's harder than everything else. And that is that when you create something, you have to be able to step back from it and pretend like you didn't create it and look at it that way. And boy, is it hard. So let's use the architectural example again. You've worked all semester on a project. You're in 220. You've worked all semester on a project. And you come to that final review, and you've got some reviewers come in. And they're going to give you a review. And they've taken time out of their day to review your work and decide whether it's, what's good and what's bad about it. If you're attached to your work, right there, that key, if you're attached to your work, as soon as they say something negative, you're going to shut down and not listen to what they have to say because it's your baby. The best example of this happened to me in studio. You built a physical model. So it wasn't even something digital. You spent all this time, you spent hours building this little model. And you come in and you present it. And the first thing that the presenter does is they come over to it and they grab it and they rip it off, or they rip the roof off. And they say, have you thought about this? And if you're attached to that model, if you're attached to that design, your instant reaction is, oh my God, you just ruined it. And you stop listening to what they have to say. If, however, you can step back and you can say, you know what, I did this design, the design's done for now. Let me listen to what they have to say. And I'm not going to panic when they tear the roof off of my house. I'm not going to panic. I'm going to listen to what they have to say. If you do that, you will learn so much more, because these people have experiences and intuitions and ideas that you haven't even dreamed about yet. And they're willing to share those with you. They're willing to tell you all about them. They're willing to tell you what's working and what's not. But if you're attached to your project, you won't be able to listen. So it's so important for you to step back and be able to do that. So when you go to your client and you present this graphic design, you need to divorce yourself from the fact that you spent hundreds of hours on this project. And when you step back and you look and listen to what they have to say, you're going to learn something and you're going to make the project that much better. So divorce yourself from attachment, analyze objectively, go back, review the project brief. Did you satisfy what you were trying to satisfy? And you can produce that final draft for production. Intuition, trusting your inner voice. So intuition is one of those crazy things. You can learn all the fundamentals, you can learn everything about design, but you have to learn to trust your intuition. Good comprehension of the techniques does not equal good design. If good comprehension of techniques equaled good design, then computers could design for us. They could just do it for us. And I think the best example, if I flip back to this one that we showed several lectures ago in the photography section, these both follow the rule of thirds, like I said. One's good and one's bad. If a computer was doing this, they couldn't tell the difference because it follows the rule of thirds. Both of them do. So you have to have an intuitive sense of what's working and what's not, and how to follow that rule. So intuition is a different level of thinking. It's the complement to your rational thought. So you have one side of your brain that's saying, this is a good idea, we should do this, and it's actively driving. And then you have this other side of your brain that's just kind of tickling there saying, I don't know, that's not a good idea. Maybe you should do that. What about trying this? It's not the rational side, it's that other side that comes sprinkling out. It comes naturally, you can't force it. As soon as you force it, it becomes rational thought. So it's just this idea. It allows for thoughts that wouldn't come through a rational process to come in. It's that crazy idea that pops into your head. That's your intuition speaking. Intuitive functions: guidance, protection, inspiration, and enlightenment. So guidance, inspiration, enlightenment, those are all positive things. Protection is the other thing that intuition serves. If you might just feel that something's not quite right. So it's protecting you. The benefits of intuition: it's really cultivating your imagination. It's letting you move beyond your comfort zone. It's letting you do something that's different and new and unique. It's the fresh and innovative solution. It's the number of ideas that you generate. And a lot of times it's that spark that pushes the overall design forward. It's when you're taking a shower and you suddenly have that idea, like, oh, I should do this. You're just going to sleep, or you dream about your project. Maybe that dream gives you that little bit of intuition. That's your intuition coming out because it's not rational. The key, though, is that you have to allow this intuition to surface without worrying about the final outcome. You have to say, yeah, maybe that's a silly idea, but maybe I should kind of pursue it a little bit. It takes a long time to really believe that your instincts are good and valuable. The other big thing that happens is that you prejudge or abandon an idea without letting it mature. You say, oh, that's stupid, I'm not going to do that. Well, maybe it's not. You should let that chew for a little bit. Let you chew on it for a little bit. The other thing is that it's not always useful. Sometimes it does pop ideas in your head and you're like, no, that really isn't a good idea. How do you nurture that intuition? Well, number one, don't be afraid to take risks. So in this class, you're set up to be able to take risks. And it varies based on studio. Some classes you're not set up for this. But I'm telling you right now that in this class, you are set up to take risks and you'll be rewarded for taking risks. The reason that I say you're set up to take is that there's no penalty. You can always resubmit your work one more time. So you could take a huge risk on, say, your assignment 102, which, by the way, is due next Wednesday. You could take a huge risk on it, and it could flop, and you could get a bad grade. But then you can go back into the safe option, turn it back in, and get a reasonable grade. But you take that risk, and maybe, instead of getting a bad grade, you nail it. And you get one of the highest grades in the class because you took that risk. That's really important. Listen for that inner voice and react to it. Yeah, that's good. Expect the unexpected. It's a big one. Don't overanalyze it. record your thoughts, and collect your visuals. Right. I love this quote. In the design process, there are things that you think about rationally, those that you learn about, and those that you are looking for. And then there is this most interesting part that you cannot be rational about. You just feel it for some strange reason. If you feel right, it will fit into the concept perfectly and make it more interesting and unique. She's talking about this inspiration. She's talking about that intuition. It feels in. It's in the back there and it comes out. I think a good example of this is if you've ever been in a studio critique in architecture, in industrial design, and one of the reviewers comes in and they're looking at your project and they're saying, it's just something not quite right about this. That's their intuition. They're saying, The other thing that happens, and this has happened for me as a guest reviewer before, is I come into something and I'm like, this just works. And I don't know why yet. I'm working on it. But there's something that just works. And I can tell based on my intuition that it works. And it's important to cultivate that process and to think through it. So as I said today, and then we'll do some live demo in just a little bit. We're working nicely on our timetable here. You're going to be designing an album cover today in your exercise. And this is meant for it to be really fun. I'd like for you to choose one of your favorite artists, and I'd like for you to create a new album that they just released. Now, if your favorite artist is no longer with us, that's okay. So if you want to do Michael Jackson, that's fine. Pick an artist that you love and do a new album cover for them. So as part of this, it's fun to look at album covers. And album covers are really unique. And if we talk about an album cover in the design sense, what is the purpose of an album cover? Well, the purpose of an album cover is fundamentally to get you to listen to a particular piece of music. So it's trying to grab you as the designer, or sorry, trying to grab you as the listener and make you want to listen to the album cover. So if you were the designer of one of these album covers, it would be your job to say, okay, how am I reaching my audience and who am I designing this for? You'd be designing it for the artist or the record label, and you'd be trying to reach the audience who you want to have listen to it. Now, hopefully I tried to get a sense, a broad take on music so that I'm hopefully hitting on a lot of the different kinds of music that maybe you listen to. I apologize if I don't have your favorite artist in here, but every single one of these has a unique quality to it. Sometimes album covers, and I use this because there's actually a pair of album covers for this. This was the original album. Then he re-released an acoustic version. And so this was the acoustic version that went with the re-release. So sometimes it's a pair. Sometimes they're just plain odd. But this is kind of maybe something you could think about for your Photoshop assignment, right? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on any one of these. But of course, we could analyze so much about each one of these and the composition of each album cover. So this is another one of my albums that I really have enjoyed. This came out in 2000. It was when the Symphony played with Metallica. And it's a great album. I don't know if you're interested in heavy metal, but if you are, it would be worth listening to. And the way that they've set up the album cover and the little logos that they've created are all really creative. They did recently have what, it was a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, they had a 20-year anniversary and they redid this album. Yeah, one of the most famous albums of all time. Yeah, and I had to throw this one in there too. So talk about a classic, right? From a graphic design sense. Pretty crazy, but very effective at the same time. I will also admit, I did go see Garth Brooks in concert, and he maybe was the best concert I've ever been to. I was not expecting that, and he was fantastic. So you never know what you're going to have.
Do you have to come up with a title for it?
It's fun when you do. You don't have to.
Okay.
Not all of them do. You could just put the artist name in there.
Okay.
It's meant. The truth is that this is very much meant for you to have fun. I want you to enjoy it. I want you to play around with it, and create something that's fun for you to create. It's not meant to be a chore. At the same time, it's really meant to be about graphic design and learning the beginning concepts of Adobe InDesign. So let me pull up right now my remote desktop here, and I'm going to open up and I'm going to do a demo. So we've got another 15 minutes or so where I'll do a demo, and I'll talk about Adobe InDesign. So far, we've been working primarily in Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to go ahead and open Adobe InDesign. For those of you that are working on your home computers, make sure that you've actually installed InDesign. My guess is you probably did, but just in case. And of course, when you're trying to do a demonstration, it always is slow. All right, so I'm going to close this splash screen for right now. Maybe, there we go. And I'm going to start a new file. So right here in the center, there's start a new file fast. I'm going to go to more presets. And I think they used to always have they still have it. How about that? Not that anybody actually listens to compact discs anymore, but if you go to the print settings, you can choose compact disc. And then we'll go ahead and click on create. And that will bring us basically a square. There's a bunch of splash screens that come up. I'm skipping the splash screens for right now. And what we're seeing here is Adobe InDesign. The overall page is the white page. That's what's showing up as your page. The pink and purple lines that are here are a completely arbitrary margin. And so first thing I do is I like to make that margin go away completely. So let's do a couple things to set up. If I want to change the units, which are currently in picas, that's the standard graphic design unit is a pica. If you worked for a magazine company, they would be working in picas. For me, it doesn't work. I don't understand how big picas are. So I like to change it to inches. We can do it in two ways. Where the two rulers meet at the top here, I can right click. And when I do that, I can quickly change the units into inches. And so now I have 0 to 4 3/4 inches or so. Alternatively, I could go up to File and then choose, where is it? I think it's Document Setup. And maybe it's not. Hold on. It's different on the Mac and on the PC. I should point that out. It's under, let's go to Edit, Preferences, and then Units and Increments. So I believe in the Mac version, it's under the InDesign menu. I'll have to go back and double check. Anyway, so we've got that. Under layout here, I'm going to go to margins and columns. And I'm going to set my margins at 0. And you'll see when I set them at 0, because they're chained together, all of them will change. And those margins will go to the full size of the page. Like I said, those are completely arbitrary, and I find them distracting when they're on the page. If you want to leave them there, you're more than welcome to. So in terms of the overall window here and the UI, we have our file menu structure at the top. Running down the left side, we have our most frequently used tools. Notice that there are some tools hidden underneath other tools. So the text tool, for example, we have a type tool, and we also have a type on path tool. So when there's a little triangle in the corner, that's telling you that there's more tools available underneath the base tool. We have our rulers running across. Over on the right side here, we have our properties of a particular object, or in this case, just our document. We also have something called pages. We're not going to cover pages today, but you can create multiple pages. So you could create a book, for example. We can also open up other menus should we want to. If we go up to the window, there's a bunch of other little pop-ups that we can open up. And when it's necessary, I'll open those up for you. So it's kind of like Photoshop, but at the same time, kind of not like Photoshop. So the way that InDesign works is that you're going to essentially create the layout of content in InDesign. So it's really about layout. It's not about the content itself. So if you had an image, you would deal with the post-processing and fixing it in Photoshop, and then you'd save that image. Then in terms of getting that image into InDesign, we don't actually copy and paste it directly into InDesign. Instead, we create something called a frame. So if we come down here, there's a rectangle with an X in it. And that rectangle with an X in it is called the rectangular frame tool. Underneath that, we have other frame tools. We have an ellipse tool and a polygon tool. We're going to stick with the rectangular frame for right now. And if I were to create a frame on the page, it's going to show up as a box with an X. Once I have that box with an X, I can actually drop an image into it. So let's go find an image. Let me open up Chrome. I didn't have it pre-open here. Let's see here. So let's do Unsplash. And so let's say that I want to find a field. Okay, so let's say I like this image. So I'll download that. Now, I've downloaded it to the computer, but it's in the downloads folder. And the way that InDesign works is that it's going to reference this file. So I need to save this file into my OneDrive. So let's make sure we copy this file. I'm going to right click and say copy. I'm going to go to my OneDrive and I'll go to today's folder. This is before I'm using it. I want it to go into my folder for today. So let's go into 109. And let me create a new folder here. Spring of 2022. And I'm going to paste that right here. So again, it's really important that you save your work. If you leave it on the desktop or if you leave it in the downloads folder and you go back to use your InDesign file, it's not going to save this file with it. This has to be on your flash drive. So now that I've saved that image, let's go back over here into InDesign. If I select my frame, so I'll select it, I'll go up to the File menu and choose Place. So File and then Place. And here I'm going to go find that file that I just saved. So we'll go into my folder for today. There it is. And I'll click Open. It's then going to drop the image into my frame. If I make the frame bigger, more of the image shows up. If I make the frame smaller, less of the image shows up. Obviously, I'm not getting the whole image in my frame right now. So they have a set of tools that helps us with that. If I right click on this frame, now that it has the image in it, and I go to fitting, I have several different options. I can fill frame proportionally. I can fit content proportionally. So let me fill frame proportionally first. So in that sense, I've filled the frame. However, there's more to the image. So if I move this over, there's more to the image that's getting clipped. If I right click and go to fitting and say fit content proportionally, I will get the whole image, but it won't fill the whole frame. So there's a difference. So fitting fill frame proportionally gives me a full frame, but not all of the image. And fitting fit content proportionally gives me all the content, but not the overall, not the whole frame. There are a few other options that I can do. So let me fill frame proportionally again. And under fitting here, I can choose to center the content. And I also have options to fit frame to content and fit content to frame. I'm not a huge fan of the fit content to frame because when you do that, it stretches and distorts your image so that it just squishes it to fit. And I don't really like that. So let me go back to fitting. Fill frame proportionally. Now, actually, from here, I went to fit. I could actually change my frame to match the content. So that can be useful. Okay, so let's make this the. So I'm going to change my frame to be the full size of the page. Right, like that. Then I'll right click and go to fitting, and I'll choose proportionally like that. Now, if I want to move what image I'm, and we can see the whole. Yeah.
We miss, I don't know, it's only me or not, but like maybe your microphone gets a little bit off sometimes, but we didn't miss entire lecture, but it's like 5 seconds.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
It's showing me as on. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, right now it's okay. Maybe it's like a position of microphone or something, I don't know.
Okay, well, no, I appreciate you telling me.
Yeah.
Let me adjust and see if I can make it better. If that happens, please do interrupt me.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought it's like my internet bad connection or something, but.
Well, maybe it was, but we'll try it and see. But
Yeah.
Thanks for telling me.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back and do that one again. If I double click on the image, we're going to see the whole image outlined in this kind of orange color. And I could then move where this image was appearing. So I can move it over to one side, or I can move it back over to the other side here, depending on my intent. Be careful when you move it because you can make it so that it, it's down and you're getting a white space on the top, etc. So let me move it over just a little bit more. Maybe I like it right there. So I have a little bit of a rule of thirds. Okay, so I've done that. Now maybe I want to bring in a particular logo. So let's see. I could come back here and do images. And I know Garth Brooks has a pretty iconic logo. So let me do Garth Brooks. There we go. So I could pick any one of these logos. Let's do kind of like this one. Let's go ahead and visit it. Free download. Excellent. And there it is. Now remember that I need to save this into my OneDrive. Before I use it. So there it is. But it also wouldn't hurt for me to open that in Photoshop to confirm that it looks okay. So I could go to Open with Photoshop. And this is where the software starts to stack on itself. So in this scenario, it looks pretty good. It's transparent. So I could probably just use this directly. If not, I could use the strategies that we've talked about before to modify this or to change it. I could, if I wanted this to be black, I could change that. We'll go with it for right now, but all of that's available in Photoshop. So let me minimize this. I've confirmed that it's okay. I'll come here and I will create a new frame. Say like that. And I'm going to go to File and then Place. And I'll choose the Garth Brooks logo. And once again, I'll right click on it. I'll go to Fitting and I'll fill frame proportionally. And there it is. So I could drop that on there. If I wanted to put text on here, I could use the text box tool. I can create a text box and I could say, I don't know, the road home or something like that. Again, I'm making this stuff up on the fly. Now, it shows up right now as black text. If I select the text and look over here at the left side, I have the ability to change the color of the text through this black T. I can double click it. I can come up to white and I can make that white. So when I click off of it, now it's white. I can also change the font. So if I were to select it over here in the properties, I can look at my character font. There it is. And I could pick any of a number of different fonts that are on my system. Yeah, so let's do that one. Sure. I don't think it really goes with Garth Brooks, but so be it. I could increase the size of the font. Now, if I increase the size to the point where it disappears, I need to make my text box bigger so that would show up. Oh, looks like it's still way too big. So let me select it. Wrong key command. And let's change that size back down. There it is. Now I can also justify to the right, etc. Okay, so I'm working to establish this. If I wanted, I could get one of those parental guidance stickers that goes on the side. Not that Garth Brooks would necessarily have that, but I could go to File and then Place. I know I already have it, so I'm just going to go find it. I can go to File, Place. It should be in my sample files here. Yeah, there's a parental advisory. I could stick that right there. Right click, fitting, fill frame proportionally. This would be a good example of fitting and then fit frame to content. Now I get the whole thing. And I can move this down here. Now, what happens if this ended up being a little bit big? If I want to shrink the whole thing, if I just change the frame, I'm going to clip it. So I can come over here to my free transform tool. And from my free transform tool, I can actually shrink the overall size. Now notice that when I do that, I can end up squishing the object. So if I don't want to squish it, I need to hold down the Shift key while I move, and that'll keep it in its proportions. So this is really meant for you to be fun. I hope you enjoy it. Create an album cover. When you're done with your album cover, and this is again very intro to InDesign, we'll spend a lot more time exploring InDesign as we go forward. We're going to go to File and then Save. This is going to save an InDesign file. It's a .indd file. That'll let you come back and work on your album cover again. So I will save that. I'll click Save. But then when I choose the piece that I'm going to turn in, I'm going to go up to File, and then I'm going to go to Export. And in the export options down here for Save As Type, I'm going to choose a JPEG. I could choose a PNG, but I'm going to choose a JPEG. We're going to make sure it's going into this folder. We'll call it an album cover, and I'll click on Save. Now, this is a big one. Right here under the JPEG export options, by default, the image quality is awful. So we're going to change the image quality to high or maximum. And our resolution here, we're going to change from 72 to 300. Okay, so maximum and 300, and I'll click Export. And that then creates a JPEG and fuses all of those pieces together. And there's my album cover fused together. And if I were to open in Photoshop, for example, you'd see it as just a single JPEG all kind of baked in. So I can't select the individual pieces anymore. Okay, so I'm going to let you guys get to work on this. If anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to talk to you. We also have our check-ins this week. So I will see the next group in 5 or 6 minutes. and we'll go from there. Does anybody have any questions for the whole group?
Yeah, Professor, I have a question.
Sure.
All right, so are we creating something completely new, or is it recreating an album cover?
No, create something completely new.
Okay.
So take your favorite band, take your favorite artist, and you're inventing a new album that they just released.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Do you have any other questions? No? All right. Well, I will see you guys in your check-ins. Remember, we don't have class next Monday, so because of the President's holiday. So I'll see you next Wednesday, and midnight next Wednesday is when your assignment 102 is due, which is your next Photoshop assignment. So just reminding you, we'll probably spend some time on that Wednesday in the check-ins, looking at people's assignment 102s and giving feedback on those. All right, I'll let you go now.